I'm just letting people into the session at this point in time. Um, all right, I might get started. Um, so everybody, this is Smart Foundations Workshop 4. Thank you for joining us today. Sammy, if you could just click to the next slide, we'll do acknowledgement. So the City of Moreton Bay acknowledges the Jinnaburra, Cubby Cubby and Turrbal peoples and pays respects to the elders past and present and emerging. Council recognises that the Moreton Bay region has always been a place of cultural, spiritual, social and economic significance to its traditional custodians. Next slide, please. So today we are doing Smart Foundations Workshop 4. So before we get started, I just want to go through some housekeeping and reminders. I do have everybody's mics muted and their videos off. This is just because we are recording this session for safety. If you would like to have your video switched on, please just pop it in the chat and I will turn your video on for you. We will be doing polls throughout the session, and I know last time we did have a few people who did not have access to polls. So this is an interactive session. So when it comes time to polls, if you'd like to respond, you can simply use the chat. So we can use the chat and the QA part of the webinar to ask questions as well. At the end of this session, we will have a short survey for you to complete. There will be a QR code on the screen. This is where you can ask for additional support. So if there's something in the session that you would like additional support on, connection to any of our presenters here tonight or to myself or somebody else, like the Small Business Financial Counselling Service, just in that survey, please put your name and email address in the comments section so that we know who to contact. Throughout the session, I will place links, any links that are mentioned throughout the session, I will place in the chat so that you have them straight away. The session is being recorded, so you will get a copy of the recording and the slides as well. But just so that you have access straight away, I'll pop in the chat section any links that are shared throughout the session. What else do we have to go through? Tonight, we've also got my co-worker, Vicky Payne, online today as well. She's one of our local business support officers. And then we'll jump into a couple of other things. If you just want to go to the next slide, Sammy. Yep, the next slide after that will be great. So, yeah, that's Vicky and me. You've got our contact details there. You can reach out to us anytime. And we can pop to the next slide as well. I just wanted to share with you all, as these sessions have all been around tax and GST and your finances, we do actually have this really awesome free workshop coming up, which is put on by the UniSC, and this is part of our Business Boost program, Tax Clinic. So this is a free tax workshop that's coming up. And I will pop the link in the chat in a minute. It's coming up on Wednesday, the 19th of August, and you are all welcome to register and attend that workshop as well. Next slide, please. As always, if you want to stay connected to what's happening in the City of Moreton Bay, you can register for our Moreton Bay Business Connect newsletter. Next slide, please. And of course, the Small Business Financial Counselling Service, which you have met Kylie previously, and Rod from the Small Business Financial Counselling Service, they are available to help and assist you if you need some one-on-one support as well. So I will leave this for Sammy to go into, but before I hand to Sammy, I just want to let you all know that we actually do have quite a lot in their session tonight. So if you do have questions that you have asked in the chat and we don't address them straight away, it's probably because they will actually be covered along the session in another slide at another point in time in the session tonight. However, if we don't get to all of your questions, we do have a Q&A session at the end. If we do run out of time, we will make sure that we answer any of your questions in our follow-up wrap-up email that goes out. So that's all from me. I will now hand over to Sammy and she will take you through tonight's session. Thank you for being here. Hang on, I don't know why you're muted. Sorry. Why are you muted? Sammy, do you want to try unmuting yourself?
Is
There you
that
go.
better, everyone?
Yes.
I
Yes,
listen to
thank
that.
you.
It's
Sorry,
that
I
voice
will
you all love.
I will mute myself now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. I can't believe we're already past halfway in these workshops, but it's awesome to have you all back tonight. And I hope your Thursday is a lot warmer than it is on my side of the ditch. It's freezing here in New Zealand. So yeah, keep warm, rug up, get yourself a nice warm drink and maybe some early dinner, and we'll crack on into it. So rather than reading from the slides, you know me, I go off on tangents. So I'll let you read and I'll just talk in the background here. So here's what we're going to work through from Henry's side tonight. So we're doing invoicing like a pro and getting paid faster. So you'll notice that invoicing and everything I say tonight connects directly to everything we talked about in workshop 3, which was cash flow. So the sooner you invoice, the sooner you get paid, and the clearer your invoice, the less back and forth. So the more professional your follow-up, the less awkward the conversation when someone hasn't paid. And so that's what we're going to go through from Henry's side of tonight's slides. It's very much the basics, it's the how-to. And then we have Sahil from LawPath tonight, and he'll introduce himself later in the slides, but they're going to go over the legal and escalation side of things in their segment. So that's kind of like your contracts or what you can and can't do when you're chasing debts, when to escalate, so that there's no overlap. So we'll do the how-to and the basics, and I'll leave all the legal and the official stuff to Sahil to go over, and then you'll leave tonight with that better understanding of how it all works and what you can and can't do, and hopefully give you more confidence when it comes to invoicing your clients. Awesome. Now I'm just working between 2 screens here. So you will all remember, hopefully, Sarah. So Sarah was Kevin's flatmate, I believe, all living in the Moreton Bay area. So we're keeping it, regional here. So she was a freelance producer, I recall, in the film and production industry. And her best month on record was May. She couldn't pay her rent in June, and that was because her client hadn't paid her until July. So that was the very, very quick recap of what that situation was. So we talked about that being essentially a cash flow problem for Sarah, and it absolutely was. But tonight, I'm going to reframe it slightly, because a lot of what happened to Sarah was actually an invoicing problem at the crux of it. So she sent the invoice a week after finishing the job, which added a week to her wait before the clock even started. There was no due date on her invoice, so the client had no clear deadlines. We'll say she had bank transfer, so that was the only payment method that she had available, or that was the only payment option she gave. So that added friction. And when it went overdue, she had no system to follow it up. So she just waited and she hoped that they would pay it on time or that they would remember. And she was a bit anxious about sending any sort of message to remind the client to pay her the invoice. So tonight we're going to fix all of Sarah's issues so that by the end of the session, Sarah would know exactly what to do differently. And hopefully, if this resonates with you guys tonight, so will you. Okie dokie. So we spoke in workshop 3 with the cash flow around the gap between completing the work and receiving the payment, and it is what creates those cash flow problems. So tonight it's all about closing that gap. So this is a stat in front of you here. So what I want you to hold on to is that the average invoice is paid 10 days after the due date. So that's based on our kind of collection of data that we've seen in the market. But for our users at Henry, because we obviously collect information on all of the people that invoice via our system, and for those that do use that feature with automated reminders, they get paid just 2 days after the due date at the latest. So that's 8 days faster than people that don't use software or something that actually help them send those invoice reminders. So over a year across all of your invoices, that time actually adds up to real money sitting in your account rather than someone else's account. And the difference isn't just pure luck, it's habits and it's process. And that is what tonight is hopefully for you guys about. So before you send a single invoice, I have a quick question for you, and I wouldn't mind you popping it in the chat. And Christine, it might be good if you can shout a few of these out to me, just because I can't see the chat function at the moment. So my question for you is, do you currently send written quotes before you start a job? So that's a yes, a no, or sometimes. So if people can just pop your answer in the chat, and we can just see how many fall into the yes, the no, or the sometimes pile.
So we have Kylie says yes, Janice says yes, Brian is typing. We did say that we will ask questions. We had a very chatty bunch last time, didn't we? On the session.
Just get them out of their Thursday 5 o'clock shell.
Oh, Amy's asking a question. I'll just unmute Amy. Yes, Amy?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're still there?
Amy, did you have a question?
I do. Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. I was having a whole conversation with myself. I can't type into the chat box, and I'm assuming it's just me. Does anybody know why? I can't click my cursor in there.
Oh.
Okay, I'm not quite sure why, because it should be able to do that. Let me just see if we can do a poll.
I'm okay with you carrying on. I will just be here.
Okay.
No worries. You're with us in spirit.
In spirit.
All right.
Awesome.
Sorry, I'll just go back to the chat.
It's all good.
Brian says no, but he has a rate card that he uses. Pamela says yes.
Cool.
He does send out. Yep.
Awesome. We'll just keep those answers coming in as we move on, but it's food for thought because it does relate to what we're going into. So great invoicing starts before you've done a single hour of work. Most payment disputes and delays come down to misaligned expectations. Either the client doesn't know what they'd be charged, or there was no written record of what was agreed. So a written quote takes more than 5 minutes and eliminates most of those problems. The deposit conversation feels really awkward until you've had one job where you've covered materials out of your own pocket, and then the client took, let's say, 3 months to pay. So there's that awkward interaction there. Asking it up front and explaining why. Most clients do respect that. And that last point about finding the right finance contact, like genuinely one of the most overlooked things. If your invoice lands in the wrong inbox, it can actually sit there weeks before anyone's acting on it. So just making sure you're contacting the right people. And all of those bullet points there, just really, really good habits to start before you even start thinking about sending those invoices. Now, oh gosh, sorry, my screen's got a bit funny. So in front of you, this is an example, and this is a Henry tax invoice, sorry. So we'll just go based on what I know very, very well and what we use internally at Henry, but it can be any invoice, it could be any format. This is very much a template from our resources page on our website, so you can go and use it if you like. But it's really, really good to see the different things that should be displayed on an invoice. And this might seem really basic, but the whole point of the Smart Foundations course is to teach you the basics, to get it right from the outset, to make sure you're not missing anything where, you know, compliance does fall into it. You want to be invoicing compliantly and make sure that you're doing all the right things. Okay, so this image is actually available on the website, but there's a couple of things there that you really need to start thinking about adding to the invoice. So what does go on a compliant invoice? Really, really basic there in the bullet points. These are the non-negotiables that should be on every invoice you send. So your ABN is critical. Without it, a client can't verify your business. It may be required to withhold tax from a payment and things like that. So it is really important you have your ABN on there if you've got one. Invoice numbers are worth using, even if they feel unnecessary early on. They just make that kind of chasing and, you know, those conversations of reminding someone about an invoice a lot easier to have. So it's just like a, hi, just checking in on invoice 003. It's much cleaner than the one I sent you in June for the service, whatever it was that I provided you. So really, really important. The due date is also important, and we'll talk more about how to set that in a moment, but it's something that you should have on there. So it's setting those clear expectations on when you expect that money to land in your account at the very latest. The payment methods, so make it as easy as possible for clients to pay you. Think about, is there a couple of payment methods you can provide them? Is it cash in the hand? Is it bank transfer? Can you utilize, depending on the services you provide? I know we do have a lot of people that you know, have market stalls and whatnot. Can you invest in some sort of POS device or something like that? So giving different payment methods, it just makes it a lot easier for people to pay you on time. The fewer steps between wanting to pay and actually paying is better off for everyone involved, essentially. Now onto the compliance parts. This is going to come back to our you know, first workshop where we went through all of the tax obligations as a sole trader. So GST did come up. It was a very hot topic in one of our in-person sessions for workshop 1. So GST is one of those things that trip up a lot of sole traders on their invoices. So let's just get really clear on it and keep it really basic and strip it back. So if you're not registered for GST, which is the case if your annual turnover is under 75,000, you simply don't charge it. Don't put it on there. Don't say tax invoice. You do not need to charge it or add it to your invoices. What you do need to note on your invoice is writing no GST has been charged, or it's showing as $0. So if you are registered, you must use the words tax invoice on this document, and it needs to clearly show the GST amount very, very clearly. So this matters because your clients who are also registered for GST, they need that information to claim that back on their own BAS returns. So getting it wrong can cause real friction in that relationship. It can cause that uncertainty around your pricing and professionalism in some cases, but it also is really important for compliance on both ends. So if you're unsure whether you need to register, again, that threshold, like we spoke about in workshop 1, it's 75,000 in annual turnover, and you can register voluntarily below that threshold if you want to. The moment you register is the moment you start charging it. So just make sure, based on your situation, if you're over 75,000 in annual turnover, that you are GST registered and you're adding that to your invoice. If you're under and you want to voluntarily register, make sure you start charging from the moment you do register, and you don't charge it until you are registered, is the essence of that. So we won't go back to workshop 1. We did cover that off a lot in that first session. So that is all you need to really know about the GST on the invoice. So a bit of a fun thing here for those that can interact with the chat function. Can you spot what's missing on Kevin's latest invoice for last month for the work that he did? Based on what we saw on the other slide, what are some of the things that are clearly missing on this very basic invoice from Kevin?
Just while we are waiting, Sammy, for people to write comments in the chat, Pascal has asked a question. Would it help if you put a read receipt function onto your invoices? Have you had much experience with that? Does the Henry platform do that? If someone sent an invoice, does it have a read receipt that they've received it?
So in Henry, we do have the functionality to see if someone has opened, viewed, or done something with an invoice. We have like little icons that show up next to each invoice on whether it was received, whether it was clicked open, whether it was opened in the well, I don't think we show the PDF format, but if they click the link to the invoice, we should be able to see that it was opened. And we can also see if someone has made a partial payment or a payment that's pending, which is typically if they've paid by credit card on that invoice. So yes, we do that. And I think it's really valuable to utilize any sort of system that does provide that kind of read invoice. So you can at least see who has interacted with it, because it could go to spam. You're quite right. When the invoice attachments can go to spam in some email providers. I know Hotmail's a shocker for it, for any sort of attachment. So making sure that you're also looking into your email provider and that sort of thing as well. If you know that there's a certain email that does tend to put any sort of attachment into spam folders, it may be worth looking at certain invoicing systems or software that can avoid that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for that comment and that information, Sammy. So we've got there's been a few people that have noticed a few areas. We've got ABN is missing, bank details, ABN, bank details, GST, invoice number, payment due date. So there's a few people that have noticed that this is really not a good invoice.
I mean, Kev's been a bit of he's decided to just go really rookie in the last few workshops, hasn't he? He could learn a thing or two from Sarah, but yeah, quite right. So again, the ABN, there was no invoice number, no due date, no bank account details, and no GST breakdown. So we have no idea if this includes GST or not, that total of $1,100, which means that, North Lakes Construction can't claim it back. And one of those gaps is it either slows down the payment or it causes a back and forth email chain and just unnecessary noise. So awesome work, guys. Like, I know it seems basic, but these are things that can easily slip your mind when you are someone who is delivering a service that you do well, that you are qualified to do, and then there's this extra admin here that you're having to do on the side as well. So making sure that you at least have a tool or a software or a feature that captures a lot of this for you, and even if it auto fills it, even better, that's saving time again. Or if you're using an Excel sheet or something really, really simple to do these sorts of things, at least saving a template copy and then duplicating it each time so you're not having to fill in the same fields. Yeah, so really thinking, how do we automate this so I don't have to worry about the admin? Okie dokie. So setting payment terms. This is going to be different for everyone. Okay, so these are just some, I guess, interesting tips to think about when it comes to how long are you comfortable, how long can you afford to wait, before receiving those funds. So I'll click them all up in front of you here. So payment terms are one of the highest leverage things that you can actually set correctly, because they define when the clock starts on getting paid. So 21 days, which is the third option there in the green, that one there is our recommendation at Henry. It's our default. So at Henry, we do have that optional invoicing part to our software, and we do set that at 21 days, but people can teeter around with it and change that 21 days to whatever days they want in terms of the default date. But we find that that's a kind of sweet spot that gives clients enough time to process payments without it being so far away that they kind of forget to pay entirely. So 2 tips that I'd really emphasize here is use a specific calendar date rather than 21 days from the invoice. So a clear date would be due 5th of August. It's cleaner, it's harder to misinterpret, it's just a number that's going to resonate. And for larger corporate clients, ask about like their payment cycle run before you even start the job, because sometimes companies only process invoices on a certain day of the month, so like i.e. 15th of the month or the last day of the month or the first day of the month. So if you invoice on the 16th, you might actually be waiting like 29 days for the next cycle internally for them to run. So making sure, if you do work with any sort of large corporate companies, work out what their invoicing system is, when they do these payments out to multiple suppliers, and make sure you align your invoice with that so that you aren't having to wait a whole extra month to get paid by them just based on their own internal systems. So yeah, 21 days. Good default, gives you enough time, them enough time, and a date that is a solid date of the month, so that resonates with them.
Sammy, just on that, as for an example, council have through their procurement process, if you've got an invoice that you need to submit, it's for local businesses. We do have a policy to try and pay within the 7-day time frame to our small businesses, and we have we have payments on Tuesdays and Thursdays every week. So council did make a commitment for our smaller businesses that we're dealing with to actually have that 7-day turnaround, because we know that cash flow is really important. So don't be afraid that if you need to have ask for a 7-day payment and have that in your payment for cash flow, that's what it needs to be. Yeah, so council understand and recognise that, which is really good to see.
Yeah, 100%. It's really, we find it in with a couple of our partners that work here in New Zealand, that they're recruitment agencies, and some of them are able to negotiate with their contractors. Normally they'll pay monthly or monthly billers, but for those that really just need the funds more upfront due to automatic payments and just the cost of living at the moment, are able to be a bit more flexible and do it fortnightly or weekly, as you say, Christine. So yeah, it's really those conversations, they might seem scary to have, but if you're having the conversations with the right people that can make those decisions, you might find that it works out better, and it saves all that fret and that stress of worrying when they're going to be paying you. So yeah, absolutely, definitely have those conversations. Right, getting paid for, I clicked too soon, sorry, you've seen the first one. So getting paid faster, habits that make a difference. So these 5 habits, they compound. So if you do all of them consistently, your average time to payment will hopefully, I believe, will drop significantly. So the one I'd put a star next to is this first one. Okay, so invoice the same day you finish. It actually sounds so simple, but most sole traders will batch their invoicing and do it at the end of the week or the end of the month, or a certain day in the week. So that sort of thing, like every day that you're delaying it, is a day you've added to wait. Okay, so just make it more easier for people to pay you. Include multiple payment options, like we said before. The fewer steps between wanting to pay and actually paying is the faster that things will happen. Mentioned it before, and I think we mentioned it in the last workshop as well. ask for a deposit up front. So splitting large jobs into chunks or asking for 50% up front. It's very common in anyone that procures your service offering, has any materials or anything like that, a cost of goods sold, any sort of that sort of thing that goes into the service you provide. It's actually really normal to ask for a deposit up front. So that money's already in your account. It doesn't leave you at any sort of loss having to go out and get all those goods or materials. It's upfront money. Okay, so it's things you should be thinking about just so you have that cash flow like we talked about in workshop 3. So the discomfort of following up is normally the number one reason why people, feel uncomfortable to be paid, or that's the reason why that delay in that payment is still occurring. So getting a system or some sort of technology that chases invoices for you is absolutely crucial. It's something that there's so many tools out there at the moment for invoicing, or the different things for sole traders, whether it's quoting, invoicing, timekeeping, or whatnot. Having these sorts of tools or technology at your fingertips that does that awkward interaction for you, one, it makes you feel a lot more confident in doing what you're doing, but it's happening in the background. So it's the one less thing that you need to think about. And sending a friendly confirmation, whether that's automated or in person, it's just helping remind the client. I don't think anyone intentionally does not want to pay the bill. It's just that it's an extra bill and it's very easy. Everyone's daily life, everyone's working a very hectic life at the moment. So it's very easy to see a date come and go and totally forget to pay a bill. So yeah, just really, really focusing on getting those sorts of tools that can do it for you, or learning how to have those conversations. So this one here, this is the following up on overdue invoices and making sure you're doing so professionally. So back to the room, has anyone ever lost a client relationship because of a payment conversation? Or has following up ever actually strengthened it? So I'd love to hear some situations on your experiences, whether it's caused those awkward conversations, it's made a delay in your payment or a really awkward interaction, or has it actually made it just clearer, simpler, and set those expectations when you've had those awkward conversations?
Sammy, I've been able to fix the issue with the chat session, with the chat part of
Oh,
it.
good.
So there's a few people that have actually gone, yay, mine's working now. So I'm not sure if they actually heard your ask. You might just have
Oh,
to
yeah.
ask your question again.
No
Um,
worries. No
they were
worries.
they were busy typing yay in the chat.
Oh, no, that's all good. It's very like it was just more. I'd love to hear from the room, because this one it's awkward and it's such a kind of topic, and some people feel so uncomfortable asking for money. I know I'm a shocker. I don't like talking about money, and yeah, I talk to you all about it and try to teach you guys how to talk about it. But me myself, it makes me all clammed up. So it's like, what I'd love to know is, for anyone that's got a client relationship and had any of these conversations about chasing up a payment, has anyone ever lost a client relationship as a result of a payment conversation? Or has the opposite happened? Has it actually strengthened a conversation and created more strengthened a relationship by having that conversation and provided more clarity? I'd just love to hear, like, if it's sit in either path for anyone that's had those awkward conversations before.
Yeah, so we've actually got a few people. Kerry has mentioned certain areas like NDIS and aged care support. There are other mandatory requirements that need to be on invoices in order to be paid promptly, like time untaken client. So I think she's referring back to what was missing on the invoices before on that question.
Yeah.
Following up does feel awful sometimes, Janice says. But as you said, it's not a big deal for those who have just forgotten because they do want to pay.
Mm.
Kerry mentions I had to make a number of phone calls over a few fortnights to a certain registered provider about being paid in the 7-day time frame. After a month of chasing up, it now comes through within 3 working days. So
Oh,
looks like
good.
Kerry might have got into a good routine with that supplier. So that's really good to see. Um,
Good.
client, I mean, Lizette says, haven't lost a client yet, but I do have one invoice that was months overdue now. I think it was missed and I haven't really chased it up because it's terrifying. So
Mm.
let's give
Yeah.
Lizette some great advice here tonight, on
Yes,
how to get
let's.
through that. Yeah. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know it was
All
certainly
right.
one of the things that I struggled with myself when I had my own business. So I got into a routine of people had to pay beforehand, rather than afterwards, or they had to pay that 50% upfront and then afterwards. So yeah. Amy says, I have had both experiences. One client argued, explaining that they had paid and showing me, however, the payment that they were showing me was a payment for a previous invoice. I didn't follow up in the first place. Instead, of omitting my poor following up and bookkeeping, I wrote it off. Client relationship is good. My profit margin's not so good. With another client, I just followed up and she said, oops, I overlooked it and paid it.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And it's that theme, right, of the people that are intending to pay, but it's like you just think about what people are juggling these days and the different things, and it's no excuse, but it's most people do want to pay their invoices. It's just that it has either slipped their mind or it's not been they think, oh, it's 4 weeks down the track, I can just do that in 4 weeks time and wait for my next payday, and then it slips their mind entirely. um so yeah, hopefully some of these examples that have been up on the screen here might be helpful. I'm not, for the ones that have slipped quite a wee while ago, maybe like a month or so, I don't think it's any harm in being able to say, hey, look, I've just been doing a reconciliation of my books and I realize that this invoice hasn't actually been paid, and it's all about that warm interaction. I don't think it needs to be, the firm or the direct kind of examples that are in front of you. But given that's been so long and you have a lovely relationship with these people, don't I worry that I've heard that some of you have just kind of written it off yourselves and taken that debt on yourself. There is no harm in still having these conversations. If it is getting to a point where you think you're going to lose the client, LawPath might be able to help you with some of the different kind of legal ways of going about it. But I do think if you have the receipts and if you can show, hey, that payment related to this invoice, I'm talking about this one in particular, and it's all about your tone and your approach, right? So making sure that it is warm and it's very welcoming, and especially if you want to keep that rapport, definitely looking into that kind of friendly reminder option in front of you there. So like we said before, most overdue invoices aren't malicious. Like, they're just really busy and people are genuinely just trying to navigate life at the moment, and things slip through. So a single polite email on day one recovers the majority of late payments. The key is just to be consistent, and you can escalate that tone gradually rather than going straight to a formal language that's quite direct and in your face. So again, keep that first message warm, and just always assume good intent, good faith. I've heard that somewhere. I heard always assume good intent, and that's something that I like to say. So just assume that the faith is there, the good faith is there, it was just an accident. So by day 14, especially if you've really set a date and it's a due date and you've been very forthcoming with these expectations at the outset, it's 2 weeks past due date. So it's reasonable to become a little bit more direct and ask for specific commitments. So what you don't want to do is go silent and wait, because that does signal to the client that you're not actually watching this, that you're quite relaxed. And some clients might take advantage of that. Not saying that that's happened in the room, the scenarios we just heard, especially if you have a good rapport, but that's not going to help you. So I know at Henry, we handle our first reminders automatically within 2 business days of it going overdue. And that just means that our contractors or our sole traders, they never have to worry about that awkward, hey, just checking in conversation. So it just happens in the background, and Henry is the one that's sending that message. So we kind of take that awkward conversation from you, and we're like, hey team, just a reminder, it's 2 days past its due date. And then we do that every 7 days past that due date. So we'll do that for 5 weeks, and you can reset it in our system if you want it to keep going. But I actually pulled some really cool stats yesterday around our invoice reminders, and we have, based on us being able to send that 2 days past due date reminder and do that on our customers' behalf, we have, I think it's like 97.3% of our invoices have no problem getting paid within the due date timeframe. For those that do go over, only 1.4% of our invoices require a second follow-up, and then 0.7% require a third follow-up. And so that's that 2 days past due date, 7 days thereafter. So we actually have having a system like that, not saying Henry, saying any system that sends those overdue reminders automatically for you, it's a godsend, because it's that you don't feel that awkwardness. It's all happening in the background. And if you do it through a provider, it's the provider chasing it for you. So in our case, it's Henry being like, pay this contractor now, but in much nicer words. So yeah, just investing in things that can do that for you will help reduce those awkward conversations and that stress or that emotional stress that you might be feeling sending those messages. Oh, what happened here? There we go. Awesome. So next slide. Automating your invoicing and having those tools that chase it for you. So I've just mentioned it now, but we've talked a lot about that following up of invoices, and it doesn't actually need to be a manual process. So there's different tools like the Henry one I just said, but there's the ones you can do for free there, and knowing how to use that. AI is great at the moment. You might be able to leverage some AI agents or create them that can do this sort of thing for you as well. So just really looking at all the tools that are at your fingertips, and a price point that you're comfortable paying as well. So if you're going to outsource it and not go down the DIY free route for these sorts of things, make sure that it's something that you can afford. And obviously these sorts of things are tax deductible. So we've talked about that in workshop 1, making sure you're claiming your expenses. So these sorts of tools, they are for your work, they are tax deductible, and making sure you're getting a receipt for these services and claiming that back as a business expense. And it's something you should invest in, because it's not only helping you get paid faster, it's helping remove that admin and that stress and that awkwardness. It disappears entirely when you have something doing it for you. So these are just some options. There's way more than this. These are just ones that I had on top of my mind. But yeah, you can read through those yourselves, and you get these slides afterwards as well, just to have a look at some of those options. But yeah, like there's another service similar to us, Rounded. They do invoicing as well. And yeah, there's your typical Xero, MYOB, QuickBooks, and Wave as well. Awesome. So moving on, why is that not working? Right, I'm going to get sick of my voice. I promise there's only 2 more slides from me. So we're going to bring it back together. So these are your takeaways from me for this evening. So before handing over to Sahil, 5 simple points is to reinforce the connection, back to our cash flow session from workshop 3. The good invoicing is good cash flow management at the end of the day. So when we were talking last time about cash flow being an issue, sometimes it is actually down to the invoicing and not being clear enough and setting those expectations on the invoicing. So every habit on this slide that you can see in front of you, it exists to close the gap between doing the work and actually having that money in your hand. So invoicing starts before the job. We've said that a compliant invoice gets paid faster. So making sure you have your ABN and all the details that you need. And like you said before, the NDIS situation, 100%. Some industries require a lot more information to make sure you're meeting those regulations, and especially in the NDIS, having the time and all of those proper quantity fields filled in for their OCR readers. So make sure, whatever industry you're working in, that you are invoicing to their standards and their quality as well. Set your terms clearly and specifically, invoice the same day you finish, and follow up politely but consistently. And if you're feeling really anxious about doing that, find a sort of service that can automate that for you and just relieve you of that stress entirely. So these are just, as we do in every workshop, some resources, and they're all available on our website. These are, again, just tools to help you. There's a free invoicing template that you can use, tips for getting paid on time that we have covered tonight, but more in depth, and just the ultimate guide to invoicing like a pro. So making sure you have all the tools you have that you need. So that's the practical invoicing content. I'm now going to hand over to Sahul from LawPath, who's going to take us through the legal side, what your rights are, what to do if a client doesn't pay you, and how to escalate that. But yeah, just remember everything on these slides. Nothing is necessarily legal or tax advice. It's literally us trying to provide you the tools and the education and that knowledge that we have from our lens on how you can do this effectively, and how you can improve that cash flow and invoicing. So handing over to Sahil, and you just let me know when you want me to click to the next slide.
Will do. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Sammy. Hi, everyone. That was really gold, Sammy. I think really a hard act to follow. So really good to hear from you. So everything, I guess, Sammy, that just took you through is about invoicing well, obviously. So invoice the same day. It's all good. You set clear terms, make it easy to pay you, follow up like a pro, like you said. Do all of that, and vast majority of the time you're going to get paid, and you never have to think about someone like myself. But for the next little while, I think I'm going to be talking about the other half of the story. Every now and then, you can do everything right. The invoice is perfect. The terms are really clear. You followed up politely 3 times, and the money still just hasn't come. And then ultimately stops being an admin problem, starts becoming a cash flow problem, and then shortly a legal one as well. And that's what I do basically. And so quick hello from myself. My name is Sahil. I'm a senior lawyer and a team lead here at LawPath. I work in commercial law and startup law, which is basically a fancy way of saying that I spend my day doing 2 things, mainly helping small businesses get the right contracts in place, the right agreements in place, especially at their launch stage when they're beginning the business. As well as helping businesses get their money back when a client does go quiet. So I read a lot of contracts, I draft a lot of agreements, I write a fair few letters of demand as well. Tonight, I'm just going to take you through all of that and just the stuff that I wish every sole trader kind of knew before they called me, because I'm confident that you can do most of it yourself. So I'll ask you to go to the next slide, please, Sammy. And really quickly on who we are, LawPath is Australia's largest online legal platform for small businesses. We've helped over 500,000, over 600,000 Australian businesses, save them heaps of money in professional fees. And we've got basically a platform that has all these document templates for you to use, for you to start kind of creating your own contracts, whether it's for staff, whether it's for suppliers, customers, whatever it might be. And, if you, for a long time, I guess, if you were a sole trader, you usually owed a whole bunch of money to a lawyer. Calling them in every 6-minute increments meant you got charged. And so that's the cap that we're kind of trying to solve. And we'll keep this in mind and come back to it at the end. I'll go next slide, please, Sammy. So today, in terms of my slides, we're going to move from prevention, so how to make it not happen, all the way through to cure. So we'll talk about firstly quotes and agreements that actually do hold up, because getting paid really starts with what you agreed to at the beginning. Then we're going to talk about your rights when you're chasing a debt, what you are allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, because a lot of people definitely would get it wrong. We're going to talk about how to escalate professionally with letters of demand, for example, and what happens if it does go all the way to QCAT, for example, which is actually a lot less scary than it sounds. So yeah, I guess the theme running through this whole presentation will be that the earlier you get things right, the cheaper it is for you, the easier it is for you later on. And that's super important, obviously. So next slide, please. We'll start with just an uncomfortable truth. Unfortunately, good work doesn't always mean good pay. You can do an amazing job, a flawless job, and still be sitting there 6 weeks later. I'm sure a lot of you have been in that position where you're chasing money that should already be in your account, and you're taking hours to basically chase this debt when you could have been on the next day, next job, basically. If we look back, if we recall from Sammy's session about Sarah, she had finished, I believe, 10 grand of work in May, but she didn't actually see a cent until July. And her cash flow problem wasn't really about the work. It was about the gap between doing the work and then getting paid for it, right? So Sammy showed you how to shrink that gap with a lot of good habits. And I'm here for the times that the gap doesn't close on its own. And then here's the key point, basically. When a client won't pay, there's two things that will protect you. One is your invoicing habits, which Sammy covered. And then secondly is your legal position. So that is the strength of what you agreed at the start, and then therefore knowing your rights. And I'll answer a few questions as I go along. We'll go to the next slide, please. Before we dig in, though, let me just knock over some myths that I hear about all the time. Because if you're holding any of these, it will cost you, basically. So the first myth is that, well, they signed my quote, so I must be covered. And that's not always the case. A quote on its own often just is a price. It's a price guide, basically. Often it won't say when a payment is due, what happens if it's late, or what happens if there is a change of scope halfway through, what happens if the job changes. Sure, you have a signed quote, but if it's silent on all these stuff that matters, I like to use the word ambiguous a lot, where we don't really know what the full story is through this document, then there is a lot less protection. So the second myth, and this is usually the dangerous one, is that they owe me so I can do whatever it gets paid, whatever it takes to get paid, basically. And that's unfortunately not quite the truth. So Australian consumer law, in fact, is actually kind of strict about how and when you can contact someone, even about a debt. I've seen people who were completely in the right turn themselves into the one who's actually legally exposed just because they're chasing it the wrong way. And we'll get to where that line is exactly. And then the third myth is that court is the only way to get my money. Also a no, definitely. So most debts actually get sorted with a good letter of demand, or definitely long before anyone sees a courtroom. And I think that's everyone's intention, usually on both sides as well. Almost always the lawyer's intention as well. Even when you do escalate, in Queensland, especially, there's a minor debt process through QCAT that's faster, cheaper, and pretty simple. And we'll go through it. But yeah, it's always easier than you think, to be honest with you. We'll go to the next slide, please. And again, we'll go next slide. Thank you so much. What makes an agreement legally enforceable? So it's really important to know. You don't actually need a massive contract that's drafted by a lawyer for something to be legally binding. I'll say that again. So you don't need a massive contract drafted by a lawyer for it to be legally binding. Even a short written agreement that's done properly will hold up just fine. You actually just need a few different little ingredients here and there. So you need a clear offer and acceptance. That's very, very to the basic core of it. That's what a contract is. There's somebody offering something and somebody accepting it. Ideally, it's agreed in writing before any work starts, okay? You need a defined scope. So that means, like, what are you actually doing? And just as importantly, what are you not doing? I often tell my clients to put a list of exclusions as well, in case somebody's assuming that you're going to do X, Y, and Z. If you feel like it's common for your clients to assume things, I would put it as an exclusion to be very, very clear. This is out of scope. You need clear payment terms. So how much are you meant to get paid and by when? So we spoke earlier about maybe a 50% deposit. Some payment is due before work starts. Some payment is due after work starts. Whatever it is agreed upon, you just need a record of it. Okay, that's the most important thing. And The last one really surprises people, which is that the record can be as simple as an email reply saying, yes, I'm happy to go ahead. You know, although it's not my ideal way, but that reply is genuinely part of your contract. So in terms of forming habits, I would recommend that you get a yes in writing. I'm sure a lot of you do that already and are very aware, well aware of that. But yeah, I just want to make it more clear. A text, an email, um, anything that genuinely shows that they've agreed. Verbal is just not enough, unfortunately. That's where disputes are really born, right? So let's make sure we record everything. We'll go to the next slide, please. And then there's a few, let's say, red flags to show you that your current setup might be weak. If a few of these sound like you, don't panic, but it is worth tightening up. So firstly, if there's no clear payment due date or late payment terms, obviously Sammy spoke a lot about this, but if your quote doesn't say when the clock starts, you can't really say it's overdue. So often the payment terms will be 3 months, but 3 months from when? You need to be very, very clear and not ambiguous. Two is your scope of work is one vague sentence. We don't want to give them an invitation for a client to argue that what you did wasn't what they had asked for. So I would love if each of you are very, very clear, whether it's a quote, whether it's an invoice, about exactly what your scope is. And three, is that if you use the same exact template for a $200 job and a $20,000 job, generally not ideal. I would imagine your $200 job has a far less liability and therefore far less stricter terms are required. But the bigger the job, the more the risk, and you need to make sure you're protected. Four, if the client never formally accepted the quote. So maybe if you started because it felt like a yes, but we need actual evidence that they're going to say yes. And five, if there's no clause kind of covering cancellations or changes to scope. This is the biggest source of disputes, essentially, especially, let's say, for tradies, for creatives, for a bunch of different people. The classic one where they say, oh, while you're here, can you also just do this and this? And so all of that is really scope creep. And if your terms don't really deal with how you deal with variations, you end up basically doing extra work for free, or you argue about it later, basically, right? And a simple line that says any changes to scope are quoted and agreed separately will actually save you, even a small line in your contract terms will go a long way. I'll go to the next slide, please.
Can we just
Yeah.
ask a few questions before we move on
Yes.
to the debt collection area? So, one question, person received therapeutic services,
Yeah.
and the invoice was sent with a 2-day terms of payment, which was actually not noted or discussed before. Um, and is this actually legal to ask for a 2-day payment turnaround
Mhm.
um,
Um,
if it's not actually advised prior to engaging with the service?
Good question. Look, ultimately, there's no like minimum time, to be very clear. There's no minimum time that you have to do 7 days or anything like this. Technically speaking, 2 days is viable. Ideally, if there's an agreement beforehand. I don't know if you saw any sort of terms or inadvertently agreed to any sort of terms while you were accepting the services. But if they're being comprehensive, I bet there was a set of terms that says that they can their payment due is within 2 days. On the flip side, if it says nothing at all, I wouldn't say that you're free from paying this either. So I think that it's important to kind of find the right balance of what is reasonable. And if you find 7 days reasonable, but their policy is 2 days, they're not doing anything necessarily illegal. But at the same time, because they haven't informed you, I would say that that's a conversation for you guys to have. But overall, to answer your question clearly, they're allowed to do that. It's not illegal, I
Yeah.
would say.
Another question. A certain platform I utilize to link in with a client, they generally take up to 3 weeks to pay for the work I have undertaken for them. And they have one payment process, which is express pay. However, it costs her 1.5% of a fee. Is that legal?
Is this legal? Yes, if you agree to it. So there's no harm done if you both parties have agreed that this is a possible arrangement that we can both have. So if they've offered to you and you've said yes, then there's nothing illegal about that. They obviously can't just go about charging you 1.5% extra without your permission, just because they think that, well, I guess they won't think that it's an express pay, but overall, yes, they can do that as long as you agree to it.
Okay. Um, this person says, I get a yes. I perform an appointment-based therapeutic service, send an invoice afterwards. Is engaging in the service a yes? Um, or do I do have intake TNCs for people. Should I add invoicing terms to those TNCs?
Yeah. So your perfect
Probably.
arrangement is that in your invoice, you have all the things firstly that Sammy laid out in terms of the dates, the GST amount, et cetera, et cetera. And then the perfect situation is page 2, you have a set of invoice terms. So basically on page 1, it has the invoice. Underneath it, it says by paying this invoice or by proceeding with our services or by engaging with us in any way, basically you hereby agree to our terms below. And on page 2, you can attach that. That's what I would advise most of my clients. It doesn't have to be a 10-page contract. It can be simple, it can be to the point, but you should get it reviewed by a lawyer ideally. If you're sending out a lot of it, then yeah, page 2 I think works really well. I would recommend that you stick to your T's and C's on the invoicing terms. If you're doing an intake form, having a T's and C's there also or instead is also okay.
Okay. We'll leave the questions there for now and we'll let you continue. Thanks, Sahil.
No problem. We'll go to the next slide, Sammy. Thanks. So chasing a payment, what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. Chasing a debt is obviously completely legal, but how you do it is actually kind of regulated. So under Australian consumer law and the ACCC and some ASIC guidance as well, there's a few guidelines essentially. Let me walk you through them. So what's okay is that reminder calls and emails during business hours, anything that's considered regular, reasonable contact is expected and that's all totally allowed. Following up, restating what's owed, ask when it's going to get paid, that's all okay. What's not fine is a few different things, and some of them are obvious, some of them are not so obvious, but you can't contact their employer or their family about the debt. That can look like harassment essentially. There's some rules. Again, it is state by state. You can't call before 7:30. You can't call after 9 at night. It has to be reasonable again. You can't threaten action. You have no intention of taking. If you say like, I'll see you in court tomorrow when you're not going to, you don't want to risk any sort of unconscionable conduct. And you can imagine people get triggered when they're trying to chase invoices. They're not in the best mood. So it's important to see what you do and say. And you definitely should not post about it on social media, right? I know the temptation as well. Someone's ghosted you. Actually, there's a current client of mine who's chasing about $70,000 because they were meant to be delivered something and it never came. And that person is just not responding and they really want to post about it and put really bad reviews. And I'm not necessarily stopping them, but in terms of chasing their money, it's not necessarily going to help that particular cause. So, it can be tempting to write on Facebook, name and shame them. It's not necessarily clever leverage. There's a possible potential for like harassment or defamation. Obviously, this is a bit more extreme, but I think you guys get the point. I think for your rule of thumb, you want to stay professional, you want to stay in business hours. You only ever say what you're genuinely prepared to do. That's really important. And yeah, and then if none of this is working, we're going to move to the next slide, please, Sammy. We will talk about escalating professionally. Next one again. So this is where it gets kind of serious, you could say. So when the friendly reminders haven't necessarily worked, the letter of demand is actually very often the step that actually would get you paid. It's actually the moment the tone shifts officially from casual to formal. In writing, I think that when especially it goes out from a law firm letterhead, as an example, the other party can tell that there's a lot of thought and process behind this. It's a lot more serious, and people that have been ignoring your emails, they suddenly find themselves scrambling to respond to this letter where there's a deadline where we've said we're going to escalate this if we necessarily need to, but you do have to do it properly. Okay, it can't just be an angry email. So in the letter of demand, and I highly recommend that if you do get to the stage, you engage a lawyer. You know, at LawPath, for example, a lawyer would draft it for you between $600 and $800. Obviously, you assess whether that's worth it for you, depending on how much you're chasing. You can always do it yourself. The only thing being, it won't come from it won't come from a legal letterhead, which I guess might defeat the purpose if they're not responding to you anyway. But on the letter of demand, you should make sure that the amount owed is stated very clearly, the invoice date you're referring to, the due date as well. You should reference the agreement or the contract or the invoice terms that the debt comes from, which is, you know, what we just spoke about. You should set a firm deadline. Usually, I would say 7 to 14 days, depending on the amount, depending on non-responsive they've been. You should spell out what happens if they don't pay. So often clients would go to QCAT or would go to a debt collection agency, for example. And you definitely should send it in writing, ideally by both email and post, so they can't claim that they haven't received it, and keep a copy for yourself. And then one warning as well, and I think this ties back straight to the myths, is that you should really never threaten something that you're not prepared to do. You know, if your letter says that we'll commence proceeding in 7 days, you should be willing to do that if that's what you are writing. I think empty threats just destroy your credibility. And if you don't follow through with that, then what else are you going to follow through with? And I think the whole point of the letters of demand are for credibility, to be very specific, to show that you're serious. And yeah, I think it carries a lot more weight when it comes from a law firm's letterhead, but more importantly, it should just be a well-written one. We'll go to the next page, please. And then when it goes to QCAT, we'll talk about in the next slide, please, what happens when the letter of demand doesn't work either, right? So this is the point where people assume they're now in for some sort of an expensive, scary court battle, but that's actually not the case. If we're talking about just Queensland, for example, and there are corresponding courts in other states as well. In Queensland, this is where QCAT comes in. It's the Civil and Administrative Tribunal, and it's built exactly for this. So it lets individuals or sole traders or small businesses actually recover their debts without the cost and formality of a real court. The whole point of it is that it's meant to be fast, it's meant to be low cost, accessible, and you don't actually even need a lawyer for that, technically speaking. So eligibility is basically just you, a sole trader or small business, with an unpaid invoice or a contract dispute. There's often a claim limit for minor debt disputes, which is around $25,000, which hopefully would cover your debt. Timing does matter. Most matters are heard within a few months. The filing fee, is usually quite low, a few $100s. And then on representation, again, not everyone takes a lawyer. It's really up to you. And it's about really assessing whether this debt is worth chasing and paying lawyers for. There's cheaper lawyers out there nowadays compared to what it was before, but still something for you to consider. But the most important thing is you need to have that letter of demand and clear evidence of the debt before you actually file. You know, it can be actually really easy when it's very, very clear saying, hey, look, I have performed the services, I have sent the invoice, I have confirmation of performing the services, they have never paid me, and here's my letter of demand. All of this paints a very clear picture that you clearly did the work and you were never paid and you chased it up as much as you could and you didn't get it. And essentially, all of this supports your QCAT claim. And if it is the case, you're very likely to succeed, to be honest, in the small claims court. We'll go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so here's the whole escalation path basically on one slide. And the message here really is just match the step to the size of the debt and how urgent it is. Not every single overdue account needs that nuclear option, basically, right? So step one is the follow-up call or email, direct, informal, just restating what's owed. This quietly resolves most overdue accounts with no dramas, basically. Step two then is the letter of demand, which is a formal written notice with a clear deadline, stated next steps. It just signals that you're serious, and in my experience, very often prompts payment before anyone goes near a tribunal. No one wants to do that. Step three is QCAT or small claims. So a formal claim for a legally enforceable outcome. It works. It does take some time. It needs solid evidence. but it's not a terrible experience, to be honest with you. The mistake that I generally see people, and I think we've heard about it a little bit today as well, and I've had a business and I've done the same, so I can't blame anyone. But the mistake that I see is people either doing nothing for months or jumping straight to threatening court on day one. Probably the former mostly. They do nothing for months, and that's because you're not used to chasing a debt, or you feel like 99% of your clients pay on time. So what's the point of this one? There's many reasons, but ultimately, if it matters to you financially, then you will care about it and you will start to follow these steps. If you are genuinely not sure which step is the right one for a particular type of debt, I think a quick chat with a lawyer early on can save you a lot of time and money down the track as well. So you're not just following the wrong path. And we'll go next slide, please. And I'm almost done. Yeah, next one again, please. We'll just talk about the final takeaways. 4 things to take away tonight. One is to get it in writing every time. A vague or ambiguous or verbal agreement is the hardest thing in the world to basically enforce. 2 is know where the line is, so you can chase a debt firmly and confidently, but there are real legal limits on how you should do that. So we discussed, things to do and not do. 3 is escalate in the right order that we just spoke about. And 4 is that you don't necessarily have to figure this out all alone. Next slide, please. And so how LawPath can help, and a few different ways, I think. One is on-demand legal support. So you can actually get a qualified lawyer like myself for a contract review or for some advice or negotiation help whenever you need it. That obviously involves custom contract drafting and review. So we'd actually be looking at your particular contracts and specifically advising you on those contracts. Separately, however, a much more cost-effective option is also our legal document templates. So we've got everything from NDAs to contractor agreements. We've even got letters of demand, so you have the right format if you want to send it yourself. All of these can be done by yourself. You don't necessarily need a lawyer to sign off on it, but you can get one to sign off on it if you want to. So, check out LawPath when you want to. And I've got one more slide, which is that, just one before this. I was meant to say that every single person on this webinar, actually, if you want to, you get a free 30-minute consultation with a LawPath lawyer, such as myself or my colleagues, my team. There's no catch. Basically, if you've got any reason you want to chat with a lawyer, if you've got a client who owes you money right now, or an agreement that you're not so sure about, or you just want someone to look over your terms, that's exactly what this is for, like no strings attached. There's actually a link which we'll send, and maybe Christine will send as well.
Yes.
Which is lawpath.com.au/COMB for City of Moreton Bay. And so it's specifically for the people in this chat. I highly recommend you take it up and just have a chat with us about whatever you like.
Yeah.
And that's all from me.
Thank you so much, Sahil. I have popped in the chat the link for the City of Moreton Bay offer for LawPath. So yes, please, those that are on the session tonight, feel free to register on that link and claim your free legal consultation with Sahil. And I really, really am appreciative of you coming on and joining us today, Sahil. I think that's actually been really quite helpful for everyone. Does
My absolute
anybody?
pleasure.
We actually have some time. So I was going to say, I'm happy to actually allow people to unmute themselves. And if anybody's got any questions for Sahil or Sammy, please raise your hand and you are able to unmute yourself right now.
And Christine, can we see that deal on the screen now? Sorry.
Yes, yeah, we can. Sorry. Yes. So
Thank you.
now that you've so generously shared that, Sammy, I was hoping that you could actually go back to the slides and I will chat through a few things
which one do you want?
Yeah, just if we want to just put up the QR code slide. Maybe that one there. Yep, cool, awesome. So yes, if anyone has any questions, please just raise your hand or unmute and start chatting. I will keep talking just in relation to the survey. After each session, we do run a satisfaction survey The QR code is on the screen. If you could please complete the satisfaction survey, that would be really great. It just helps us understand what we've been able to help you with here tonight. And again, if you've got any questions that you would like to have addressed by Sammy or Sahil, or you'd like to be connected to Vicky or myself or the Small Business Financial Counselling Service, please just put your name and email address in the comment section of the survey there for SurveyMonkey. And then I can make sure that that is followed up afterwards. Now, our next, we've got a question here actually from Janice. I haven't had issues with people paying invoices, but I have paid invoices and been ghosted with the work not done. Is there a cutoff date for following this up legally?
Great question, Janice. No, not really, to be honest. So what I would go off is the invoice. So if the payment terms were 30 days and sorry, let's say if the delivery date was 30 days and it hasn't been delivered within 30 days, I'd definitely follow up once, twice, 3 times maybe. And if still no response or no delivery or fake promises, let's say, I would probably engage a lawyer to escalate to a letter of demand. And in cases like this, so for example, I'm dealing with one right now where they were meant to be delivered a $50,000, $60,000 item and they haven't gotten it. No one responded. We sent a letter of demand. They never responded. And then we sent a statutory demand claiming that this is money that we are rightfully owed because we never received the services or the goods. They never responded. So now we're in the process of the next step, which is escalating that to like a wind-up application. So there's a lot of routes basically, and none of them guarantee that you'll definitely get your money back. I must say there are many situations where there's other creditors. You might be an unsecured creditor. That company may have a bunch of secured creditors. They're going to get paid out first if this company goes into liquidation and they can't pay their debts and stuff. So I can't say it's a guarantee that you get that money back, but you could start escalating probably a week or two after you have like passed the delivery date and you haven't heard any positive updates.
Thank you, Ta. Genesis said, thank you very much. That's very helpful. And again, yes, please, we will send the recording out from the session and we'll send the slides out like we normally do. That will come out on Monday. But you do have access to the chat and I have popped in all the links. Once the session has finished, the recording will automatically pop up in the chat. So you will be able to go back to the recording as well and have a look at anything there. So I know that Amy is actually typing a question at the moment, but Amy, please, if you want to just actually unmute yourself and ask the question, that is fine as well, but happy to wait for you to pop that question in the chat. I just wanted to quickly go over next session. So for workshop 5, just to give you a little bit of excitement about what's coming as well. The workshop 5 will be how and when to register as a company and growth planning. So we are hoping to have LawPath back with us for the next session. We will also have Dr. Wayne Graham from Uni SC joining us, and they deliver Uni SC have a few courses that are free to attend, and Dr. Wayne will actually be doing a business plan on a page. So that will be really quite quick in the session next time because we've got a lot to get through in the next session, in session 5. But Wayne will actually take you through that in the next session, the plan on a page, which will be really quite exciting. Kerry has just said, I'm going to do the tax one next week. Yeah, so that's the Business Boost Uni SC clinic, and I've popped the link in earlier for that as well. So thank you. That will be really great, Kerry. And then our final workshop, which is in October, we will have Renee from Constant Contact joining us as well for that session. That will be in person. So Renee will take you through some marketing for your around how to win and keep your customers. And plus we're also inviting back everybody who has been to all of the sessions. So Small Business Financial Counselling Service, Queensland Government Business Assist Group, we'll invite Law Path, we'll invite all the different people who you've met along this journey back to that in-person session. And we'll have some time at the end of the session to actually network, and we will have an offer for all of those people who have actually been on this journey with us for the Smart Foundations program. So we will have an offer for you at the end of the whole program. And so it will be very exciting to see you all in person at Workshop 6 in October. Amy is asking, Christine, is that one in person again? Yes, the final workshop. So workshop 5, which is the next one in September, is online, just like this, and workshop 6 will be in person. Yay, very exciting. Well, yes, we certainly wanted to bring everybody back together for the very final workshop. We really want to encourage everyone to actually network with each other as well, and have that one-on-one engagement. And the marketing workshop, I think, will be really important to be done in person as well. So yeah. I think if nobody's got any questions, we might be able to wrap up a bit earlier tonight. Sammy? Do you have any comments?
Wow. Well, I finally stuck to it. I tried not to go off on my tangents. We've got one from Kerry there. What was that? That just popped up.
Carrie has said, can a reminder be sent a few days beforehand for the next online workshop, please? I find it hard to find my way back to my emails. So just to explain what happens, you get an email with the initial invitation to the workshop. So that will come out. Then you will get 1 week before the workshop, you will get another email that will have the link to register again. And then once you have registered via the little webinar link where it says register via this link, you will get an automatic reminder 9 hours before the session. So that's early in the morning on the day. So please just keep an eye out for the emails, possibly have a look at your spam and check your spam, because it will be there somewhere. And yeah, so there'll be a couple of emails that will come out. So we do 3 emails altogether. So Kerry, I will have a look and just double check that your email address is correct. So that might be an issue. Maybe your email address is incorrect. So I'll double check on that. We've got a couple of other people commenting. They're just saying thank you very much. A lot of people have said thank you very much, Sahil and Sammy. Okay, cool. I reckon we can wrap it up. Thank you, Sahil and Sammy. I really appreciate everyone's time tonight. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Bye.
Sahil. See you, team.
Bye.
Bye.